October 1979, foothills between Boyds and Sugarloaf Mountain, Maryland. Cold, dry night. 4 of us went on a short hike, planning coffee at dawn and home by noon. I was a sergeant then, steady enough, new father. We camped near the ridge, sky clear, woods quiet. The ranger told us to stay out of the ravines after dark. We laughed. We shouldn't have. If you've walked those trails, listen closely, because I'll tell you why we didn't come back the same. So before we continue, please make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel and comment down below where you're watching from. Thanks. This happened in October 1979 in the foothills between Boyds and Sugarloaf Mountain. Evening light fading, air crisp and dry. We were 4. We were not looking for trouble. We were looking for quiet. I was Sergeant Daniel Mercer then, 28. Steady, practical. New father. My boy was 1 month old. I kept a folded photo in my breast pocket, smile on his face. My wife holding him. That paper sat against my ribs all night. I checked it when no one watched, tapped it for luck. Corporal Alonzo Marks had a few years on me, 31. Broad shoulders, protective. He kept the small wooden cross his mother gave him, wore it on a cheap cord under his shirt. He said it mattered. Specialist Pete Harlow was 22, eager, nervous cut-up, liked to talk. Carried a little notebook with local facts and trail notes. He liked being the guy with an answer, even if it was half wrong. He could lighten a mood fast. He could also make noise when quiet was better. Private Tommy Henson was 19, youngest, quiet, wanted to prove something. He wrote letters home every Sunday. Even in the field, he would scratch a note on Sunday. He said his mom counted on it, kept him straight. I believed him. We came in on the back of a truck near Boyd's, dismounted in the dust and dry grass. The sun slid down over the trees. We shouldered rucks and stepped off. We moved along a marked path. White blazes, easy grade. We were planning one night out, then back by noon, clean and dull, nothing to brag about. Just a training walk and a quiet watch. A chance to breathe. We joked about the cold, breath already showing in little puffs. Harlow said he wanted hot coffee at dawn so strong it stood a spoon up. Mark said he wanted bacon. Henson laughed, a quick sound, then shut it down and checked his strap. The kid always checked his straps. At the trailhead, a ranger had warned us. He was thin with a big hat. Said to avoid the ravines at night. Bad footing and strange echoes, he said. He looked serious when he said it. We laughed it off later. We were young and dumb, thought our training beat a local warning. I remember the way he watched us walk away. He kept his hands in his pockets and didn't wave. We passed the split for Comus Road far off and found our path cut northeast toward the low ridge. The tree lines above the Seneca Ridge Trail went dark and neat. We could see the Monocacy River Valley far off when the trees opened, a flat stripe made of fields and water and gray. It felt good out there. A clean cold. No traffic hum. No bass noise. Just boots over leaves, gear clack, light talk. We checked map and compass a few times. Old school. Harlow wanted to try pace count. I let him call it. He got excited when it matched the map. Then he wrote it in his notebook like it mattered. I checked my wristwatch. Caught the second hand smooth. We found a flat spot near a low ridge with a good clear line to the sky. I wanted that. A clean sky gap helps you orient when the dark settles and the woods press in. It also means you can watch the weather and anything else that moves over you. We set up simple, small fire ring. Nothing flashy. Mark scraped a circle and cleared it to mineral soil. I boiled water in a blackened pot. We kept the flames low. Harlow passed out lunches, cans, dry crackers, a little jerky. We ate with our gloves off and shook our hands in the cold. We teased about who wore more layers. Henson said the cold never touched him. He grinned. Then he cupped his hands over the steam from the pot and closed his eyes and said nothing for a bit. We talked about home. Harlow had a girlfriend in Frederick. He said she made pies with real lard and he would marry her if she made 2 more. Mark said his mother would smack him for that talk. Henson said Thanksgiving was coming and maybe he could get home to Hagerstown for a day. I said my boy smelled like milk and I planned to be there for his first laugh. Normal talk. Warm, routine. The kind you keep safe because the world outside tries to dig it out of you. Night moved fast. We bedded down after a last check. Radio on the tarp edge. Pack line set. We had a small fire. We let it burn down to a bed of red. The trees clicked a bit in the cold. The sky over the ridge was clean, stars sharp. The kind of night you want. No bugs, no wet. You can hear your own breath. The forest held still, then softer, then almost sleepy. The ranger's words came back once. I tossed a twig at Harlow, told him the ravines had strange echoes. He grinned, made a ghost sound, and then laughed. Mark shook his head and smiled. Henson said nothing. He just watched the treetops. I did not think much of it then. I should have listened harder. We traded a watch schedule without writing it down. Old habit. I took first. Always have. I can sit quiet while others sleep. I walked the small circle, checked the fire, tapped my pocket with the photo, looked at the stars and thought about dawn and coffee. I planned an early move. A walk down to the Coffin Rock clearing and back by mid-morning, then out to Comus Road and the truck. Easy, clean, no drama. That is how the night started. Safe, routine. The comfort of simple tasks in a quiet forest. Then it shifted. Not all at once. Little steps. Enough to make you think you imagined it. You will think you imagined it. Until you cannot. The hush deepened too fast after sunset. One moment a few birds still called in the canopy. The next the songs cut off. Not a fade. A stop. I stood there with a half-chewed cracker and my mouth open. Nothing saying. It felt like the woods held its breath. I told myself cold does that. It can. But this was sharp. Final. A smell drifted through that did not fit. Hot metal. Not smoke. Not the fire. A metal shop smell. The air never stirred. No wind on my face. No brush moving. The smell came and went like a hand over your nose and mouth. There, then gone. I looked up. Stars fixed. No clouds. Fire low. My skin prickled and cooled again. Harlow came back from a short walk with a grin and a find. He had a flat plate of old metal in his hands. He said it was a mile marker, half buried in duff down the trail, moss thick around the edges. He cleaned a corner and held it to the fire. There was a bullet hole drilled through it near the middle. Clean round. The metal around the hole was dark and smooth. He said it was local color. I told him to put it back. He hesitated, then did it. He laughed, but his eyes stayed on the trees. Marks talked about Coffin Rock, said he heard a story once. Missing searchers, carved signs in trees, people gone in the night. He told it like a half-remembered camp rumor. Then he waved it away. Movie nonsense, he said. I nodded. Still, he fingered that cross while he said it. He did it without thinking, I noticed. I unfolded the county map we carried. Old print. Out of date. It showed a small stone chapel marked in tiny letters south of Comus Road. I had never heard of one there. None of us had. It sat by a stand of white pines according to the little note on the edge. We all shrugged. Harlow said his notebook had nothing on a chapel. He tapped his empty page and promised to add it if we found it. He grinned again. The grin had a crease in it. A sound came in from far off. Not a coyote. Not an owl. Not a farm dog. It had a hard edge, cold. It arrived in a single strand and stopped clean. I kept my face still. Harlow looked at me. I kept listening. Another strand of sound reached us and died. I decided not to name it. Naming things too early turns your head. The fire popped. Sparks jumped. For a breath, we all saw the sky over the ridge go black in a long band, like something big crossed between us and the stars. The sparks hung in the air and then faded. Henson turned his head slow. He did not say a word. He asked if we should move camp. His voice was even but soft at the edges. I told him no. Moving blind is worse. You get turned around. You twist ankles. You lose your line. We had a clear sky gap here. Good ground. We would hold where we were. I made that call. It sits inside me heavy to this day. I think about it when the house goes quiet and the fridge hum stops and I can hear my own blood. I made that call. We ate the rest of what we had open. Talk thinned. We checked our watches and rucks without comment. Harlow closed his notebook. Mark sat with his back to a log and rolled the cross cord around his finger. Hansen wrote something a few lines long on a torn scrap. He folded it and slid it under the rubber band on his wallet. He caught me looking. He shrugged. "Sunday," he said. I nodded. The smell of hot metal brushed us once more. It was thin but clean. My tongue tasted copper, then nothing. The trees did not sway. The cold deepened. The sky stayed clean. The hush held. I began to think of morning in a hard way, like a point I had to reach. I wanted the light more than I wanted sleep. It broke our quiet with no warning. From the dark ridge, a scream tore out. Short, hard, metal on metal. Then it dragged across the trees and ended in a hiss. All of us stood at once. No one spoke. The sound came again, farther around, like something moved fast and patient outside our small world. The second scream bounced off the ridge and bent low. It felt like it was counting us. I took my rifle in both hands. Safety check. Clean click in my head. Not loud. Everything felt housed in wool. Harlow whispered a curse and pointed to a tree trunk at the edge of our light. Carved into the bark was a 7-pointed star. Old, faded. He swept his light to a stone. Another star. Same cut. Same 7 points. Wet leaves stuck to the stone face and peeled off slow. We fanned a short distance, staying within sight. No one got heroic. More stars showed along the trail, on stones and one old post. Marks ran his fingers over one. The cuts were deep and worn smooth at the edges. Somebody had turned steel into those lines a long time ago. The marks led us into a shallow dip. The trees leaned away there, and we saw the shape of it all at once, stone walls half high in a rectangle. A fallen bell lay half buried in leaves at the rear corner. A small graveyard sat to one side, stones sunk and leaning. No roof, no door. A stone chapel in ruins, exactly where the map had lied small about it. No white pines anymore. Bare hardwoods, black against the sky. The ground felt wrong underfoot. Harder, colder. We stepped in. The temperature dropped. It bit. Our breath thickened. Marks traced another star carved into the inside wall. This one was bigger. It had been painted in red long ago. Faded now. Flaking. He brushed a paint chip with his thumb and it broke to powder. He shook it off his hand and wiped his palm on his trouser leg like it stung. He did not make a sound. In the doorway, there was a wooden bench. It had been pushed up against the entry stones at some point. The legs were splintered. One end was braced by a stone chunk. It looked like someone had tried to lean it hard to bar the way. I pictured hands doing that. Eyes on the dark, bodies pushing. It put a weight on my chest. I breathed through it. A low hum brushed the air, not wind. It started nowhere and ended nowhere, like air vibrating inside a pipe. It was there for 2 breaths and then dead. We all looked at each other. You could see the same thought. Wind does not do that. I said it was the wind anyway. It helped none of us. The leaves at our boots did not move. I checked a sky gap where a roof would have been. It was open and clean. I could put the moon in my sight and hold it there. The open ground and fallen walls made me feel safer than the trees. Trees hide too much. Open ground gives you angles. I told them we would shelter here, east wall to our backs until first light. Then we would head out. No arguing, no wandering. We pulled our gear in and set a tight stack near the largest intact corner. We made a small nest against the stone. No fire, no light. We ate the last of the heat from our canteens. Our boots scuffed grit on the flagstones. The chapel felt empty in a way that pulled on you. Not big empty, narrow empty. Like sound had no place to sit. I set the watch again. I stayed up. Harlow whispered that this would make a hell of a story later. I told him to keep that to himself. He nodded and pressed his lips together and put his notebook away. His hands shook a little. I pretended not to notice. The scream came again from the ridge. The walls caught it and made it thin. A hiss followed. The hum rose and fell once more. My skin tried to crawl. I pressed my back to the cold stone and kept my mouth shut. First light was hours away. I knew that without looking at the watch. The night had that stretch to it. It was going to be long. The cry kept repeating. Same gap between calls. Same hard edge. Then it went quiet. The quiet felt louder. We listened to the edge of it, waiting for it to break again. Nothing. The sky above the ruin dimmed for a breath. A shadow band cut across the stars, and then the stars snapped back. No clouds. I checked again. Still none. We heard air moving low over the trees. Heavy. Slow. It did not gust. It swept. A long pass. Then nothing. A scrape came from the fallen steeple base. Metal against stone. A clean drag. Dust fell from the broken seam in the wall and sprinkled our shoulders. We all flinched together. No one said a word. Henson stood. He said he would take a quick look. I told him to hold. He did not sit. He stepped out through the doorway and moved left. He kept low. He did not answer when we hissed his name a minute later. No twig snaps, no branches, no scuffle. The air closed over where he had been. I stood up so fast my knee popped. We went out two at a time. Marks and me left. Harlow stayed in the doorway and watched the gap above. We kept low and moved around the corner. We found his helmet on the ground. The chin strap was scorched. One edge of the strap looked melted. A black scrape curved across the dirt. Wide. A half moon. The soil there was fused and shiny where it cut. No blood, no prints that made sense. No exit. Just that mark and the helmet. I picked up the helmet. It was warm on the scorched side. I set it back down. I had nowhere else to put that feeling. The night held still. The breath in my mouth felt wrong. I tasted old coins. Back inside the ruin, the 7-pointed stars on the wall had deepened. The lines looked wet. They were not wet to the touch. The carved grooves felt cold and a little oily under my fingers. A thin smell of iron sat in the air now, steady. I could not shake it. Harlow said folks in Frederick County painted these stars on barns to keep sky things off. He said it without a grin now. He said his aunt had one on her shed. He said he thought it was farm charm. He did not think that anymore. He dug a bit of charcoal from the fire ring we had left behind and tried to redraw one star on a stone with a clean, sharp line. His hand shook, but he got the points right. He breathed fast while he drew. When he finished, he set the charcoal down slow, like he thought it might break the air. I put us backs to the highest wall, eyes on the gap. I counted the seconds between the sounds we heard, the passes, the scrapes, the calls. I built a rhythm in my head. The times were even. A long, patient sweep around us, not random, not drunk, purposed, the kind of pattern that tells you are being measured. We kept still and let it measure. We had nothing else. The heavy sweep of air came again. Dust lifted from the floor stones and settled. The chapel seemed to wait. My watch ticked. The second hand jumped smooth, then too smooth. The 12 at the top of the face stared at me like an eye. I looked away. We whispered to each other in simple words. No plans longer than one sentence. No what-ifs. We set where we would move if the wall broke. We checked our magazines and our slings. We did not raise rifles to the sky. Firing up into black makes people feel better for 5 seconds and then worse forever. We kept our barrels low and ready, and our eyes high. The next pass scraped the outer edge of the wall. A long shiver ran through the stone. Chips fell and nicked my knuckles. I did not pull away. The chips were bright and fresh in the moonlight. That is when I knew this was not old ghosts in trees. This was here. This could cut. This could break. This could carry a 19-year-old away with no sound and leave us with a warm helmet and a burned strap. It showed itself in pieces. First, a shape cut across the gap above. Too wide for any bird I knew. Wing edges too clean. Motion too smooth. Not flapping. Not gliding the way I had seen before. Just a pass across the open rectangle and gone. Then 2 pale points hovered over the wall line for the space of a single breath. White hot. Weld sparked bright. They flared and blinked out. We all swore under our breath together when they lit. The light felt wrong in my eyes. It had no warmth. It just tore detail out of the dark and then put it back. Something probed the ruin. A claw or hook or tool dragged along the top stone of the wall right in front of us. It sounded clean and metallic. It left a groove that shone bright and new. The groove smoked for a second and then went dull. My teeth hurt in the cold air. I tasted iron again. Marks lifted the small wooden cross in his fist. He held it steady at arm's length. I swear on my life the wood warmed in his palm for a second. He hissed and then said it cooled at once. He did not drop it. He pressed it to his chest and swallowed hard. I did not tell him to put it away. Harlow scrambled to the cracked bell where it lay half buried. He jammed a branch under the lip and levered it so the bell mouth knocked against the stone. The sound that came out of that broken thing was wrong. Bent, thick, waterlogged. It thudded in our ears more than it rang. The forest answered. The metal scream cut in closer than before. The call and the bell tangled. My gut clenched. I told him to stop. He did not need telling twice. The next hit landed on the far wall. The stones jumped and rattled. Dust turned the air gritty and dry. I saw a wing edge in that moment, not feather, not skin, hard plates, hammered sheet, dull and old. Moonlight ran in thin lines across it where the plates overlapped. Each line was straight and sharp. The edge moved past and vanished. A smell of wet leaves under hot steel came with it. The smell stayed. We held ground. We crouched low without letting our bodies take over and curl up. We kept our chins high enough to see the gap. We spoke in short whispers, 2 words at a time. Check left. Watch top. Hold line. Marks kept his prayer under his breath. Not loud, not fancy, just the same few words in a loop. Steady. Another pass scraped the wall and threw rock chips. One hit Harlow's cheek. He grunted and put a hand to it. When he pulled his hand back, there was blood on his fingers. Not a lot, just a thin line. He stared at it. Then he wiped it on his trouser and looked away from the wall like he was ashamed of bleeding. That is how people are. They think small losses mean weakness when the world is actually trying to eat them. I told myself the ruin had kept something out once. Those stars were not there for show. People cut and painted them on every flat surface in reach. They dragged a bench to block a doorway. They left a bell shattered. This place had been a shield, thin but real. We were inside that thin shape now. We had to make it hold. Time broke in that place. I checked my watch because that is what you do when you cannot fix anything else. The minutes jumped. The second hand moved smooth, then it jerked, then it sat, then it rushed. The moon slid around the branches and then backed up and then held. It made no sense. My head knew it. My body just tried to breathe slow and count my breath. The shadows in the ruin stretched and then pulled back again. Long to the far wall, then short around our boots, then long again. No cloud passed. No new light. The stars above were steady, but the dark inside the stones moved on its own. I kept my back set and my eyes steady. I tried not to blink when the shadows changed shape. A tapping came from beyond the graves. Faint, far, 3 light taps in a row. Then a pause. Then 2. Then nothing. It sounded like knuckles on wood from below ground level. We froze. The tapping stopped and never came again. It did not feel like the thing above us. It felt like something else entirely. That was worse. The world had more than one wrong in it. The air heated for 3 breaths. It felt like a stove door open. Sweat came up out of nowhere on my neck. Then it went cold enough to hurt my teeth. My jaw locked. My breath smoked in big puffs. I told my hands to stay open on the rifle. They did what I told them. I counted that as a win. I thought of my wife and my son with the milk smell. I saw the picture in my pocket in my head and not with my eyes. I told myself I would get us out by dawn. I said it in my head steady. A promise. I pulled air in slow and set my back harder to the stone. Harlow whispered that when he was a kid in Middletown Valley, he saw those 7-point stars on barns after a bad harvest. Old folks painted them and said they kept something off. He said he never asked what. He said it fast and angry, like the words were a relief valve. Marks told him to keep his voice down. Harlow shut his mouth and nodded. He swallowed and rubbed his cheek where the rock chipped him. Another heavy pass slid over the wall. This time the wall gave. A whole section near the corner broke and fell inward. Stones hit the floor and bounced. One grazed Harlow's hand. He yelped and jerked back. Blood came out quick this time, a short smear across his palm and between 2 fingers. Marks grabbed him by the collar and pulled him clear of the falling rocks. They fell in a weird calm. No clatter, just thuds and scrapes. The dust that came off them looked gray in the moonlight, and then black, and then gray again, as if the air could not decide what color to be. Harlow's blood smeared across one of the carved stars on the floor-edge stone. The mark smoked for a second. We all saw it. The grooves went from old and red to fresh and black in a breath. A thin thread of heat curled up and vanished. The smell of iron jumped. I felt it on my tongue and in the back of my throat. We said nothing for a few seconds because there was nothing good to say. That is when I saw its face. Not a full face, a near look. A long beak of dull metal pushed over the wall edge and paused, pitted. Old, not polished. The tip had a hook. The hook held still. Air pulled in and out through the beak with a heavy rasp, the way a bellows breathes, steady and cruel. The eyes above the beak flared again. White gold, not human, not animal. Lines of heat bent the air around the eye sockets. The smell of a hot tool laid on wet leaves came strong and pure, then it pulled back and lifted. The wing plates clicked once, metal on metal, and were gone. We pressed closer together, backs to the largest wall left. Boots tight, shoulders touching. We were past bravado. This was survival posture. No sprint, no hero move. Hold, wait for the opening. Try not to break. The thing dragged the broken bell out from the leaves with one claw. It moved it like it weighed nothing. It set the bell against the stone and rang it slow. One strike, pause, another. The tone crawled into the air and made the hair on my arm stand. It was not a clear bell, it was wrong. It pulled the space in the ruin thin. Each strike said, "You do not belong under this sky." The walls answered with low grit. The air around us went stiff. We did not respond. We held. The creature's patience was worse than rage. It knew we were trapped and had time to spare. It wanted us to make a mistake. It had already taken Henson. It did not need to rush. It had done this before to people who had carved stars and painted them and pushed benches against doors. It knew the rules here. We did not. Not yet. The answer came into my head plain. It would not step into the ruin unless the lines broke. The blood on the symbol had already done something. The star went black. The air thinned. It had pressed closer right after. We had to seal the lines. Clean. Sharp. No gaps. No drip of anything across them. We did not have paint. We had ash. We had charcoal. We had hands. I ordered Marks to help me redraw the stars. Not fancy. Just the shape. Just the shape. 7 points linked clean. All the way around the chapel floor where there were stones to carry the mark. We kept our bodies inside the shapes as we moved. We worked quick. No speeches. No prayers except what Marks already muttered under his breath. Harlow held the cloth to his palm to stop the bleed. He kept his eyes on the sky gap and flinched at every pass. He did not run. He did not cry. He shook. That is what courage looks like when the world is wrong. I told Harlow to give me anything he remembered about old folks and stars and bells. He swallowed and spoke through his teeth. He said a church elder once told him bells call and bells send away. Damaged bells call bad. Clean bells call good. A true bell can push a thing off if you ring it with a straight hand. He told me fast. He did not care if I laughed. I did not laugh. I pushed through the graves with my shoulders down and my chin tucked. The stones there were small and drunk. Names half gone. Years sunk under moss. I moved slow so I did not fall into whatever hole waited there. I searched without touching more than I had to. I found a rotted wooden box under a slab near the end of the row. The lid had split. Inside lay a small handbell. Copper or brass under the green crust. A funeral thing, I guessed. A way to call folks to a grave. I held it up. It felt real in my palm. Not light. Not heavy. Honest. I brought it back and wiped the spider webs off on my sleeve. The creature lifted over the open roof line as I stepped into the ruin. It held there. The white gold eyes turned. The hook on the beak dipped. It waited to see what I had. I did not give it a show. I took a breath and rang the handbell one time. Clean. High. Not broken. The sound cut the air. The wrong tone from the cracked bell fell back. The ruin felt thicker in a blink, like the space inside the walls got weight again. The thing recoiled. The wing plate swept back. It crashed into the far trees and broke branches and tore bark. The crash echoed down the dip. It was gone for a long 10 breaths. We looked at each other and did not dare smile. It came back hard. No patience now. Claws scraped stone. Eyes burned hotter. The beak hooked and pulled at the wall edge. I rang the bell again, then again, steady. Not fast, not slow, a beat anyone could march to. I kept it low so the sound filled the ruin and not the sky above. My arm shook. I told it to stop. It obeyed. Marks traced the last of the stars with careful strokes of ash and charcoal. He pressed the lines down with his fingers like he could smear protection into the pores of the stone. Harlow kept pressure on his hand with a clean cloth ripped from his shirt tail. He held the edges tight and hissed when the cloth stuck to the blood. He did not let a drop fall. He leaned back against the wall and kept his eyes on the gap and said, "Ring it steady, Sarge." I said nothing. I rang. A pale rim of dawn showed through the trees. You could not call it light yet, just a lighter strip over the north shoulder of Sugarloaf. The moment that rim revealed itself, the ruin changed. It felt less thin and more solid with each clean ring and each closed star. The air eased. The wrong hum faded back. The handbell's tone held true. The thing hovered at the edge of the gap with the wing plates half folded. It could not enter. It hit the wall one more time, a hard, mean strike. Stone chipped and flew. The mark lines held. The white gold eyes looked down through the open roof one last time. They were flat, no anger, no pity, just the plain stare of a thing that has its work and goes about it. Then it let out a long, ripping cry. It rose in a slow, lifting sweep and crossed the treetops toward the north face of Sugarloaf. The wing plates clicked again, a thin, clean sound. The air fell quiet after it went. Real quiet, not the forced hush from before. Just morning woods waiting to wake. We stayed put for many breaths. The ruin settled. The smell of hot metal thinned. I lowered the bell, and my arm felt like it belonged to someone else. Harlow let out a breath that rattled. Marsh's lips moved slower and then stopped. We were still alive. 3 of us. I did not say Henson's name. Not yet. I could not shape it with my mouth. I knew if I spoke it, I would bring a different question into the ruin, and I was not ready to carry it. We pushed out cautious. We stepped around the fallen stones with care. The first weak birdsong came in from the ridge after a few minutes. A light breeze moved the leaves and made a dry hush. The forest sounded normal but brittle, like it could snap back to wrong any second. I told us to move. No sweeping search. No wandering into the dip and the graves again. I had the bell in my ruck, wrapped in a cloth. We picked up what we could carry and left gear that did not matter. We walked out the same line we came in. No one spoke. We kept our eyes on the trail and our boots in each other's tracks. Harlow took point for a stretch without being told. He did not joke. He set a ground-eating pace that did not burn the lungs. Marks took rear and checked our back trail without looking up into the sky gap. I held the middle and watched both ends and the trees to the right and left. My hands hurt from gripping the bell handle and the rifle both. I told them to loosen. They did. The chapel went behind us, and the smell of iron went with it. The air turned clean and cold again. The trees felt like trees again. It took time to trust it. I did not believe in safety anymore that morning, not with the bell in my pack and the image of a hooked beak hanging in my head. Not with a helmet on the ground behind us and no kid under it. By mid-morning, we reached the pull-off on Comus Road. We stepped out of the trees in a rough line. We must have looked burned and cut and a little feral. A ranger was there by a green truck. Same hat, same thin frame. He squinted at us and raised a hand halfway. He asked if we heard the wind last night. He said he could hear it from the road. I said, just the bell. He washed my face and did not push. We signed the sheet at the trailhead. We left the time blank for when we turned around because I did not know what to write. We did not talk about Henson on the walkout. We put his name on the page when we were safe, in plain letters where it counted. We did the report later in a room with a door that closed. The words did not feel true on paper. They never do. They were all we had. I kept the handbell, wrapped it in cloth and put it in a drawer at home. The cloth smelled faintly of old smoke for years. I never rang it again. My wife never asked where I got it. She knew not to ask sometimes. She knows now. I told her the bare bones once after our boy was asleep and a storm hit the house and the lights browned for a second. She listened and took my hand and said nothing. That was enough. March went back out to Boyd's one Sunday with no one else around, parked by the road and walked into the trees until he could see the line of the ridge near Coffin Rock. He left a small cross at the tree line, not the one his mother gave him. Another one he carved from a peeled stick. He said a short prayer, turned around, and walked away without looking back. He told me that in a quiet voice months later in a motor pool, right before lights out. I said, okay. We never talked about it again. Harlow stopped hiking at night. He married the girl with the pies. He bought a small place near Frederick after a few years. He painted a 7-point star on his barn door in flat white. It was not for show. He told his kids it was for good luck. They traced it with their fingers and asked for a story, and he said, no, not that one, pick another. He kept his notebook in a drawer next to his marriage certificate and his discharge papers. He said the ink from that night looked darker than other days. Some nights in the valley, folks hear a metal cry from the ridge. They say it is train brakes. They say it is a distant truck on a grade. I have sat on my back steps in the dark and heard it thin and far. The hair on my arm stands in the same pattern every time. I do not argue. I say nothing. I walk the fence and check the gate, and then go inside and sit with my back to a wall that has no windows. I keep my bell in its drawer and do not touch it. When someone asks about Sugarloaf and the trails around Boyd's, I keep it plain. Stay off the ravines after dark. Do not ring a broken bell. If you find the old chapel, redraw the stars before you sleep. Keep your back to stone. Watch the sky gap. Move at first light. Put names on paper when you are safe. That is all I have to give. That is all that ever mattered. So that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free. And if you want more terrifying encounters like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there. See you soon.